Okay, walkthrough video for solving using the quadratic formula. So let's start with the first one. Number 1, k squared minus 3k minus 4 equals 0. So a couple things. Just a reminder, 1, make sure it's always set equal to 0. In this case it is, so we're good there. 2, definitely label your A, B, and C. It's going to be very, very helpful. Sometimes I see that students don't label and then they make a mistake just by simply entering in the wrong coefficient for A, B, and C. So always put out what A is, what B is, what C is. Okay, if you are struggling to remember the quadratic formula, this wasn't in the video last week, but there is a song, okay, and it's to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, and you'll hear it in Algebra 2, potentially geometry, but I just want to introduce it now, and it's called, or it goes, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So I'll do that again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, get it stuck in your head because that's going to be very, very helpful to memorize the quadratic formula. Okay, so, and again, the quadratic formula is used when you can't factor. You could always complete the square too, but it's just another tool to use. But it's mainly when we have irrational solutions. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug things in. So negative b is negative 3, so positive 3, plus or minus negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4, all over 2 times 1. Okay, so what I like to do next is I like to focus on just what's on the inside here. Okay, and none of our answers are going to be decimals, by the way. They're always going to be exact, meaning they're going to be a square root or an integer or rational, like a fraction, things like that. But we aren't going to deal with decimals. Okay, so that's why I'm not going to put the square root. If you're using, I'm assuming you're using a calculator, even though you shouldn't be. But if you're doing this in a calculator, don't put the square root in. Okay, because you're going to get a decimal and we want an exact answer. So we're just going to put in, it's actually called a discriminant, okay, the b squared minus 4ac. We're just going to simplify that, okay. So let's see, negative 3 squared is positive 9. Don't forget your parentheses. And then we're going to have 4 times 1 times negative 4 is positive 16. So we're going to have 25, okay. So it's going to be 3 plus or minus the square root of 25 over 2. Then what is the square root of 25? Well, that's just 5. And then we're going to break this up. Okay, so I'm going to do 3 plus 5 over 2 and 3 minus 5 over 2. So 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 over 2 is 4. This is x equals. And then 3 minus 5 is negative 2. Negative 2 over 2 is just negative 1. So those are our answers for number 1. So because they're rational, because they're integers, I should say, we could have factored this. However, I want us to use a quadratic formula. Okay, number 2. So first thing, it's not set equal to 0. So I'm going to add my 3 over. And we get x squared minus 2x minus 6 equals 0. So we're going to use the quadratic formula again. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I bet if you ask your parents the song for quadratic formula, they'll still know it. It's like the one thing that kids remember from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Okay, so, meaning like long-term memory, right? You guys remember lots of stuff. But like, I know like my friends who are like in their 40s and 50s, they still know this song. Okay, so let's see. Oh, we're here. Okay. So let's label. This is A. A is 1. B is negative 2. It's a negative. And C is negative 6. So we're going to plug this in. So x equals positive 2, because a negative and negative make a positive, plus or minus negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 6 all over 2 times 1. So we're just going to focus on the discriminant right here. Okay, So this is going to be 4 plus 24, so 30. 28. If I could add, that would be helpful. It's like, oh, 30, it's 28. So let's do 2 plus or minus 2. Okay. Well, from there, we need to simplify, okay? So square root of 28. It's not 28 is not a perfect square, so I have to look for factors that are perfect squares inside 28. This would be 4. 4 is perfect square, and then the other factor is 7. So I'm going to take the square root of 4, which is 2, and then leave the 7. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. There we go. Leave the 7, and then this is over 2. Okay, in the video last week, they talked about reducing things down. So it has to happen in each part, right? It has to happen in each coefficient, okay? So there's a 2 here, there's a 2 here, there's a 2 here. So I can divide a 2 out of everything. So I'm going to do, they did 2 over 2 plus or minus 2 over 2 over 2 over 2. That's how they wrote it in the video. It's a little confusing, okay? But what they're just saying is divide out a 2 into each coefficient. So this would be 1 plus or minus 1 square root of 7 over 1. We don't write things over 1, and so I'm going to get rid of this 1 here, and we're not going to include the 1 coefficient because we don't need it. So it's 1 plus or minus square root of 7. The answer key breaks these up, but I'm totally fine if you leave it as one piece. So that is 2 terms. It's 2 answers right there. I'm saying 1 plus square root of 7 and 1 minus square root of 7. Okay, let's try number 2 now. Let me pause and erase. Sorry, I mean number 3. Okay, so again, it's not set equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to add the 3 over. 2p cubed minus 3p minus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to label a is 2, b is negative 3, and c is negative 3. Our quadratic formula, I keep erasing it, but that's okay. So we'll sing the song again just to annoy you guys a bit more. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Great vocals. Okay, so we're going to plug this into the quadratic formula. So it's going to be negative b is positive 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3 all over 2 times 2. Okay. Again, we're just going to simplify our discriminant first. So this would be 9 minus, let's see, that's 8 times negative 3. So that's positive 24. So x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 33 all over 4. Okay. And 33 is not a perfect square. So we think of factors that are 33 that are perfect squares. 3 and 11, so those are not perfect squares, so we can't simplify this anymore, so this is your answer for number 3. Okay, number 4. Okay, so number 4, again, I'm going to add 2 over, because we need to set this equal to 0. Okay, so then we need to label, so A is 1, B is 2, and C is negative 4. We're going to plug it into the quadratic formula. So x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 4 all over 2 times 1. Okay. Then I'm going to just simplify the discriminant, which means the number on the inside of the radical, okay, of that square root. So this is 4 plus 16, so that's 20. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 2. I can reduce down the square root of 20, square root of 4, square root of 5. X equals negative 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 5 all over 2. And again, since there's a 2 here in all 3 of them, it looks like a little pizza or triangle, okay? you can take out that 2. So it's going to be -1 plus or minus square root of 5. I'm dividing everything by 2. And that's your answer for number 4. Number 5 is going to be in another video. And so I'm just going to do number 6. Let me erase real fast. Okay, here's number 6. 5x squared equals 5 plus 5x. Okay, so we need to get everything on the same side. So I'm just going to subtract my 5x and my 5 over, okay? And make sure it's in standard form. The x squared, then the x, then the c value, okay? So a is going to be 5, b is going to be -5, and c is also going to be -5. And then we need to use the quadratic formula. So x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to do x equals, it's a -b, so +5, plus or minus -5 squared minus 4 times 5 times -5 all over 2 times 5. Okay? So again, we're just going to focus on the discriminant. So we're going to get 25 minus 4 times 5 is 20 times -5 is 100, so positive 100. So 125. So x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 125 over 10. Okay, let's try to simplify this down. So we have 125. I'm looking for a perfect square in 125. It's going to be 25 and 5. What's the square root of 25? Well, it's 5, and the 5 is left over on the inside, and 10. Okay, so we're looking at our coefficients, 5, 5, and 10. What can I take out of all 3 of them? Okay, it has to happen to all 3 of them. Well, I can divide each one by a 5, right? So it's going to be 1 plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1, but we don't write it in front of the square root of 5. And then 10 divided by 5 is 2. So that's your answer for number 6.